Right, hello Year 10. Today we are looking at the second lesson for B5. B5 being uh, the topic in biology where you are looking at the types of ways in which your body responds to things, including your last lesson, which was on homeostasis, which is probably a new term for you. Looking at your nervous system, which is what we're doing today. Looking at your endocrine system coming up, which is your hormones. Um, hormones in reproduction, control of blood glucose levels, which is very important, and diseases associated with that, as well as a required practical on reaction times and your reflexes. So the whole topic is looking at ways in which your body responds and to changes both to the inside of the organism as well as changes to the outside, the environment in which they have to respond. Okay, so today we're going to be looking at the parts of the nervous system. You came across the nervous system last lesson, and really, we were talking about any system having a set of receptors which can receive information, a coordinator which can take that information, process it, and make a decision on it, and then a set of effectors which allow for the response to be generated. Today, we're going to be focusing on the parts of the nervous system. We're going to name them. We're going to have a look at specific parts, the actual cells, the specialized cells, which you have come across back in Year 9 and B1 a long time ago. Look at their parts and how they're specialized. And again, I think that very important biology overarching sort of area, which is how, through evolution, how our structure that we discover. So when we look at these neurons, when we look at any structure in an organism, how that structure is adapted, how it relates to its function. Okay. And then lastly, looking at how the nervous system, explaining how the nervous system helps humans interact with their surroundings, coordinate response. So we've got a couple of images here trying to show you where we use our nervous system. Sometimes that kid looks like he's pretty lucky that guy got his arm there in the way. Sometimes we have to react very quickly to situations to try and avoid harm and damage. Other times we have to process information very quickly. Okay, if you've never seen or watched skiing on TV, I think I caught a view that Ski Sunday is back on, even though with coronavirus in a different format. But it's phenomenal how fast these guys go, and when they come over a jump and they land, really, really interesting. They have to adapt because they have no idea what the snow or ice is going to be like when they actually hit that patch. They fly over these sort of humps, and then just as they come down, they have to do a myriad of things to sort of get their balance back and make sure that they can keep going at the speed and they don't have to brake too hard. So again, conscious control. So they are deciding, they are moving everything and processing everything, doing it themselves. Unconscious reflex reactions where you don't think about it and your body just acts. Over the next couple of lessons, you're going to be learning about those. And so I hope you do find this topic interesting. Lots of students do. Okay, so quickly, what do you remember from last lesson? Pause the video, have a look at these, and see if you can come up with some examples or answers. Okay, so hopefully you've taken the time to pause it. 3 examples of homeostasis in humans. So you could have said something like temperature regulation. You could have said something water balance, controlling the levels of water in our bodies. What else? We've got our blood glucose, determining and maintaining the level of glucose in our blood at the right level. We've also got, and you may have not have covered these in your last lesson or come across them, but we've got homeostatic mechanisms that respond and regulate the pH in our blood. We've got receptors determining our balance and where we are. So it's called proprioception. We've got a lot of those in our ears, which is why when we get sort of infections and maybe an ear infection or something like that, it often makes people feel really dizzy because it messes around with their homeostatic sort of regulatory function. We've got chemoreceptors in our arteries as well, measuring the levels of oxygen and carbon dioxide. We've got baroreceptors in our arteries. A barometer is an instrument that measures air pressure usually. But so baroreceptors in our arteries measure the pressure in our arteries. And actually, if the pressure gets too high, if our blood pressure gets too high, it's really dangerous for us. Our body will initiate a response to lower our heart rate, even against our will. So we've got loads of homeostatic mechanisms, but I think the three that you want to try and remember are temperature, maintaining our core temperature inside our body, water levels. Okay, that's where we produce more urine or less urine if we're dehydrated, and then blood glucose levels. Name as many parts as you can of the nervous system. So again, we sort of started this lesson off talking about effectors. These are our muscles and our glands. There are two types of effector that bring about a response. We've got our receptors, which detect changes, and they send impulses and messages into our coordinator, which is our sort of central nervous system, our brain. Okay, so we've got those as parts of the nervous system. What are receptors? Again, like we said, specialized cells. We've got them on our tongues, our chemoreceptors to taste the chemicals. We've got them in our nose, chemoreceptors again, to detect chemicals and smells. We've got sound receptors in our ears. We've got, like we said, baroreceptors in our blood vessels, touch receptors in our skin, and as well as heat receptors and pain receptors. So loads of receptors all over our body, all ready to receive changes, which are called stimuli, and then send messages into our brain, allowing it to build up a picture and decide on our appropriate responses. And then why do we need a nervous system? Well, basically survival. Okay, any organism that has the ability to send messages from one end of the organism all the way down to the other part, quite a long way away in terms of a cell, is going to out-survive. It's going to out-survive an organism that doesn't have that ability. And so we think that the organisms that have developed and evolved nervous systems, and things like that, basically have allowed them to escape danger, survive, and reproduce better than the organisms that didn't develop these sorts of systems. Those organisms got eaten or died out. So a nervous system allows us to respond to our changing environment, whether that's the internal environment inside us or the external. Right, so let's get back onto this. When we look at this, you learnt back in year 9, you learnt about this. It's possibly it was called a nerve cell back then. Okay, we are going to use the term neuron. Okay, so that's really, really important that you learn that and you use that. Okay, it's a key word, a neuron. Now, it doesn't mean you can't use the word nerve. A nerve is actually a bundle of neurons. Okay, so this nerve here, and when we say, "Oh, I've got a trapped nerve in my shoulder" or whatever, is because you do have a big, thick cord. But inside of that nerve, which is more like nervous tissue, you have single neurons, which are lots and lots of cells, okay, running in. And that might be a sensory neuron or a motor neuron. So the first new word we need to be talking about and learning about today and using is this term, a neuron. And when we look at the structure of our neuron, you would have done this back in year 9. 3 things. Features, adaptations are of note. So we've got lots of these branches okay, called dendrites. Yeah, along the end here. We've got our nucleus, our cell body here. And then the cell does something weird. And instead of being sort of a round blob like any animal cell, one, we've got these dendrites, these lots of branches. Two, the cell body then comes and extends out into this massive, long, really long part. And then it ends with some more connections, okay, some nerve endings. This long stretch is called an axon, okay, and that's a key term you want to learn. And in most of the cases for your neurons, they are surrounded by a fatty sheath, okay, here, which just wraps all the way around. Okay, you've got to imagine that this neuron here, what we've done is we've sliced down the middle of it. Okay, so if you think of it as a big long tube, like if you've ever seen a spring onion, okay, if you ever use a spring onion, big long thing, if you cut down that lengthwise, okay, and took half away, that's what we're looking at here. So this is the middle running all the way through, and then wrapped all the way around the axon is this fatty yellow sheath, okay, called a myelin sheath. So we've got three features. We've got these lots of nerve endings, lots of connections, got a very long shape, and then we've got this fatty myelin sheath. What we need to do is figure out why. What are these adaptations and how are they helping a neuron carry out its job, its function? Okay, so if we start with its function, what do these neurons do? Well, let's say we've got a receptor cell here, okay, and that's detected some heat in our hand because we've gone and grabbed at the hot end of a pan that we thought was cool. That receptor cell has detected the stimulus, okay, which is the heat, and it has passed a message on to this neuron. This neuron is then going to take that message and send it all the way along the axon, all the way along to here, to this nerve ending, which is then going to connect with another neuron, which will take that message into the brain. Okay, so that's the job of this neuron. Or we might have another neuron where we've got the brain here going, oh, I've just received information that my hand is very, very hot, sends a message down this part, all the way down your neuron to these nerve endings, to your muscles in your arm to say, let go of that pan. And they cause the muscles to move and you drop the pan. So either way, what this neuron is doing is receiving a message, sending it somewhere else, and then passing it on. So why is the axon so long? The axon is so long in order to carry this message, this impulse, from one part of the body to another. Okay, in some people, their longest axon is going to be something like 1 meter long. Okay, from their big toe all the way up to their spinal cord. What is the myelin sheath for? Well, the myelin sheath is there in order to speed up. Okay, it acts like insulation. All right, and it basically means that the message will pass much more quickly, much more rapidly along the axon. And so that, again, helps with our reflexes and helps with our survival, stops us getting damaged. And then lastly, why are there so many branches and connections and nerve endings? This is allowing this neuron to connect with other neurons. Okay, so the brain might want to send multiple messages down neuron to lots of different muscles to say, let go of all of that. Let go, your hand needs to open, first of all, and your arm needs to move back. So you've got lots of muscles. So we want to be able to send a message to lots of different muscles, okay, from this initial neuron. So we want lots of connections. So those are our three features of our neuron. Okay, you need to learn them and be able to explain what the adaptations are and how they relate to the function of the neuron. Okay, onto the structure of your nervous system. So here we've got two parts. We've got our central nervous system, which is made up of the brain and the spinal cord here in yellow. Okay, any neuron found in there is going to be classed as part of the central nervous system. And then all of these green ones come out, and they either run out away from the spinal cord, taking messages to your muscles or your glands, or they run in to your spinal cord in order to then take messages up to your brain to allow your brain to coordinate the response. So we've got two types. We've got in and out neurons here. And we've got three main types of neuron that you also need to learn the names of. We've got sensory, relay, and motor. If you pause the video now and have a look at these and see which one do you think lines up with which. So hopefully you had a go at that. What we're going to do now is see that our sensory neuron, they take impulses from our receptor and they take them in towards the central nervous system, usually to the spinal cord. Our relay neurons are neurons that connect sensory and motor neurons. So they are in between. They're found in between your sensory neuron, which leads into your central nervous system, and then your motor neuron, which comes out. And your brain and your spinal cord are mainly made up of relay neurons. Okay, they have lots and lots of nerve endings. They make lots and lots of connections. And then motor neurons, these take impulses from your central nervous system, from your brain and your spinal cord, to an effector, of which there are two types. Your effector can be a muscle or a gland. And that brings about our response. So contract the muscle or the gland releases something. So we can see here our little flow chart of what happens. We've got our stimulus. Let's say it's a loud sound, okay, a bang. That's detected by the receptor cells, in this case in our ear. They then send an impulse, a message, along a sensory neuron in to our central nervous system, so into our brain or our spinal cord and then our brain. Our brain then goes, wow, that was loud. Okay, we need to protect our ears. It sends an impulse down a motor neuron out towards an effector, in this case, the muscles in our arms, and they contract to bring about our response, which is to cover our ears. So in this way, you can see with any example how a stimulus, a change, is detected, that information sent to our brain, and then our response is brought about quickly, usually by our neurons as well. Okay, so here another example. We've got our light receptors here, detecting our stimulus, detecting a glass of water, feeding into our brain via our sensory neuron, our relay neurons in our brain, carrying the message, changing it, making it into a response. Our brain may be making a different decision, and then sending that impulse down a motor neuron to our muscles, saying, grab the glass of water and lift it up because we're thirsty and we want a drink. So we've got a couple of different types here of action. Can you sort these into two different types of response? Okay, just pause the video and have a quick look. And hopefully you were able to go, right, okay, which of these are potentially things that you don't have control over? Okay, sometimes, obviously, you can blink when you want to, but sometimes when something flies near your face, you blink automatically. You don't have control over it. Versus situations where your brain is deciding to do certain things and to move. And this is going to lead into your next lesson on reflexes. Right, anagram time. Always love an anagram. For some keywords, pause the video and see if you can figure out what these are. Okay, hopefully you had a go and you got them right. Okay, so we've got some key terms here that you need to know. And then finally, can you name, pause the video, and can you name these? We've got the 5 different parts of the nervous system. So that's our receptor, our neuron, our coordinator, our central nervous system, our coordinator. Then our, effector, okay, in our muscle or a gland, bringing about our response, okay. 4 examples of receptor cells. So that could be for, light receptors in your eye, touch receptors, sensory receptors in your skin, heat, sound, pain. I've got a whole bunch of those. 3 types of neuron: sensory, motor, relay. 2 types of effector: muscle or a gland. And 1, the importance of the nervous system. Hopefully you've got that in with regards to, trying to keep us surviving and allow us to survive and respond to a changing environment. So today, guys, hopefully you've covered that. Once you've watched this, have a go at the Google Forms quiz. That will then, show your teacher your answers and see whether or not you've picked up what we wanted you to do for today. All right. Have a great day. Bye.